So we said, well, if we're going to raise it 4 feet, why not raise it another 5 feet and give us a covered area, literally doubling our usable space. This, of course, being open and not air-conditioned space. But it's essentially squared off by the pool fence, and you have a lot of usable area, which will be great for going back and forth between the pool. You want to get out of the sun or the rain. It also has its own dedicated set of bathrooms. We kind of envision this being a little more plain, kind of like painted concrete. Just real simple, something that can be hosed down if it's kind of messed up or whatever. It also has a little outdoor fireplace stacked with the fireplace from the clubroom above. And a core entrance right here. Something else to point out before I go to there is that we have broken out the pool equipment, which was inside the clubroom, out into a separate pump house. So we've freed up some more space right here. But this is the main entrance. We have an elevator core, which takes you up to the next floor or stairs. Next slide, please. And this is the clubroom. This is pretty much regaining what we had before.
When you have to repair 50% or more of the structure, you have to come up to current code. We would have to, because of the way that was built, we had to completely tear out the plumbing, the electrical, and we would have had to do a lot of the superstructure. A lot of that wood had been damaged at the time when we weren't managing the club. There was an old termite infestation. It was more than 50% damage. So we are obliged by law to be up to current code, which means bringing it 4 feet out of the floodplain. We looked at doing just that, just elevating it by 4 feet. The amount of ramp that we would need to be able to go in and out of that was prohibitive. Even to use the bathrooms, it would have been prohibitive.
We have a limited amount of time here, and we want to give everyone a chance to talk and express what they feel as much as time permits, and we're going to do that at the end of the presentation. So I would respectfully ask everyone to try to hold your comments, write them down, keep them in the back of your mind for just a little longer, please. Do you want to move on to your part of the presentation, or do we want to continue with option B? I mean, basically what you're seeing here, yeah, I mean, you're also seeing up to the top a deck that we've added that extends over the pool, which gives us a nice second-story view of the river. Yeah, the deck overlooking the pool. This is the option B plan. At the pavilion level, things are getting a little bigger in terms of the footprint. That's the actual main clubroom. Now, the size of this clubroom, okay, and that's a proposed attic space, which is kind of a function of what's left over as the building massing grows. We're saying leave it as an unfinished space for now. And this is the largest pavilion area. This is, if we were to do this, this is the most that the city of Roswell would allow us to do. It is also what the board of directors agreed to with the committee to pursue initially on this project. This does not represent what we are going to build. This represents the maximum that we could build. And that's the clubroom, obviously similar to the size maybe of the auditorium at Esther Jackson, maybe a little smaller. And obviously it has more broken out spaces, and the attic level can act as an additional office meeting room, so on and so forth. And these elevations represent the yellow, obviously being the option A. Option B gets a little larger in terms of height and depth into what you're seeing with the red, and the option C representing the overall green color. And these are, again, this is the elevation for as you enter from the turnaround and you walk to the pool or directly in. Next one. That's the poolside elevation. So if you're looking at the pool, you look back at the clubhouse. And that's on the other side, sort of, the west, sort of, if you took that view, you might see that from the tennis courts. These are just, we'll quickly scroll through these. These are the drawings that were actually approved by the design review board at the city of Roswell.
I'm Jeff Robertson. Some of you I saw walk in after they introduced us. What I was telling Tony was that what the DRB approved, what we're showing here, the DRB reviews exterior aesthetics, colors, material types. They look at the site plan. They want to make sure that you have enough parking spaces, etc. It doesn't have anything to do with the size of it. It doesn't have anything to do with how many bathrooms it has. It's strictly they look at it and say, yeah, that is pretty enough to build in the city of Roswell. To put it very simply. The next step, the next part of our presentation, I'm going to be going over the financials. I'm going to ask politely, please hold your questions. I can't go through this and field your questions. I will take them afterwards, I promise. But we also have to remember that other people may want to have questions, so I want to make sure we have enough time for that. So if you could go to the next, please. Real quickly on the schedule, I want everyone to know where we are and where we've been. This red line right here represents the 1st of August was the last time that we updated this. You'll see everything to the left is stuff that has happened already. Everything to the right of that line is things that are going to happen eventually, or need to happen in order to start construction. The takeaway from this is that I have it set here as approximately early September. We'll get into that in a little bit later, but that's the kickoff point once the board makes a vote, and I understand it's not necessarily September 1, it's sometime in September, to then prepare the construction documents for permitting, then to get it permitted, to bid it out, and then start construction. We're projecting right now, if this schedule holds, September of next year being done with construction of the clubhouse. So, next slide. So, what's this going to cost? And how did we come up with all this stuff? We put together a pro forma, which I have taken bits and pieces and highlighted them on each slide. The complete pro forma, you'll see the numbers here. It's a little bit condensed here because it doesn't translate well if I threw a big spreadsheet up here on the screen. But the numbers are the same. You can see we have option A, option B, and option C. The construction budget, we have broken down into 2 categories, hard cost and soft cost. What's hard cost? What's soft cost? Hard cost is construction. That's bricks and sticks. Concrete, wood, roofing, that's the stuff you actually build it with. What's included in these numbers? Everything. Landscaping, hardscapes. Hardscapes is concrete, asphalt, sidewalks, things like that. The structure itself, the exterior envelope, that would mean the skin of the building, the roof, the siding, the brick, whatever, the stone, whatever we end up with the exterior skin of the building. And then the interior finishes, which is your carpet, your paint, your gypsum board, your wiring, your plumbing, etc. Soft cost. Soft cost is pretty much everything else in order to develop a project. Primarily, that's your design fees, your architect, your structural engineer. Your MEP stands for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers. You also have permit fees in there. There is a contingency included in there. Construction administration is included. That's the architect administering the contract with the contractor. And then there's materials testing. That's something, it's kind of like insurance. You get a third party to test the concrete when they pour it to make sure they're pouring the right concrete, the right strength, etc. So that's all considered soft cost. There's nothing really magical about that. It's just kind of how it's divided up. A couple quick words about the numbers you see up here. Option A, we've gone through the footprints. Option A right now, we're looking at approximately, we call that $830,000. Now, how did we come up with that number? And for that matter, any of those other 2 numbers in the green line. When we had a schematic design, we had the architect sit down with a local contractor. Neil met with them, and they looked at on a very, very broad 50,000 square foot or 50,000 feet square foot basis. They said, well, today's economy, generally, what kind of finishes are we talking about here? Well, we don't want it, it's not going to be too extravagant, but we're not going to just, have a bare concrete floor. We're going to have something in between. They came up with some numbers that they felt like were reasonable, and they came up with some numbers. We had to move a little bit farther down the line as far as design to get to more of almost a schematic. It's not really fully schematic, but that's not important. We get to what you see there, the drawings you saw today. We turned that over to a professional estimator, a third-party estimator. He put together an estimate, more of an elemental estimate. It's not purely just square foot, like just looked at it and said, bam, $300 a square foot or whatever. He looked at it elementally and said, your structure is going to be this roughly, your finishes are going to be this roughly, et cetera, et cetera. So it's more detailed, but not nearly as detailed as a detailed estimate would be when you have permittable, constructible drawings that you can do a quantity takeoff and say, there are 1,000 board feet, and I got to go buy that. It's not that detailed yet. A good way of putting it is we know we're going to have some kind of flooring. We have a floor. We got to put something on it. We've got an idea. We put a number in there. We think we can get something reasonable. Maybe it's carpet. Maybe it's some kind of vinyl. I don't know. We don't know. We haven't picked it yet. So you add that with the soft cost, and this is relatively fixed in that the design fees are the design fees. We've had these proposals for quite some time. The permit fees, those can fluctuate slightly. That's why you'll notice the numbers change as they go up. The contingency changes. It's a flat 10%. That's to cover us throughout the design and construction for unforeseen conditions. Maybe we hit soil we didn't expect. There could be a material cost increase that we couldn't have anticipated, things like that. So just to use option A, because you can read just as well as I can, option A, when you take the hard cost and soft cost together, we're just right at $1 million total cost. Next slide, please. So I've touched on a few of these things. A construction cost estimate, I mentioned, it's a professional estimator. We've corroborated it based on having the architect and a contractor look at it, and then a couple months later, when it was a little bit more defined, we had an estimator take a look at it. Their pricing was very, very similar. We're within margin of error for the stage at which they were pricing it. It's conceptual. Basically, that just means that the concept or the idea of what we're doing is more prominent in our thinking than the actual material thing. We don't, like I said before, we don't know what kind of flooring we're going to put down there. We've got some ideas, and that's kind of thought into the assumptions of the pricing. It's scalable. And what does that mean? Scalable means we've had a lot of questions throughout this process of, well, A is all it is, and B is all it is, and well, I don't want either. I want something in between, just to use an example. We can do that. There's some things regarding the design that could be scaled up or down. Finishes are a good example. Do we want, in the club room, do we want beadboard on the walls? Does anybody know what beadboard is? It's that plywood with the kind of ridges in it. Do we want painted beadboard? Or do we want actual drywall with painted? Or do we want drywall and some fancy wall covering, like some, not even vinyl, like a nice paper, wallpaper? That's 3 examples of austere to really nice. Some examples of scope reduction we've talked about doing. We've got an attic in those plans. We could take that out, save us money. We've got fire protection, sprinklers in there. We could take that out, it'd save us money, although I think we should talk to our insurance agent about that. Right currently there's a passenger car, an elevator in there. Again, that's for ADA access. We think that we could get away with a wheelchair lift as opposed to a passenger car, but that's subject to review from the city, so we're just not that far along yet. What's not included in that total cost I showed you? We don't have any furniture in there. We don't have any drapes. We don't have any window coverings. We don't have any pool furniture, pool equipment, or interior design. We haven't hired an interior designer. We're not spending that money. Next slide. So what about operating costs? A question came up at the finance committee. Well, if we build this thing, is it going to cost us more to operate, or how do we know? Turns out we didn't really know what it cost to operate the club to begin with. We had a good idea, but it took us a little while to get that together. So what you see here is the annual operating expenses for the River Club based on the last 3 years. These are averages. The bottom line here is it cost us $120,000 to operate. Now, this is not just the clubhouse itself. This is the pool, the tennis courts, the entire property. The reason we have it this way is we don't keep our records. When we pay bills, we don't separate, well, it costs this for the electricity for the clubhouse and it costs this for the pool. It's not metered that way. We can't, we didn't break out the invoicing that way. So the total River Club is $120,000. There was $83,000 in revenue. That revenue is dues, outside members, and rental charges. Thank you. Pardon me.